Hello and welcome to Thoughts on Rice, a podcast hosted by the University of California Cooperative Extension Rice Advisors. I'm one of your hosts, Sarah Marsh Janish, and I'm a rice farm advisor for Colusa and Yolo counties.
I'm Whitney Brim-DeForest. I'm the Cooperative Extension Rice Advisor for Sutter, Yuba, Placer, and Sacramento counties.
My name is Luis Espino. I'm the Rice Farming Systems Advisor for Butte and Glenn counties.
I'm Michelle Leinfelder-Miles. I'm a farm advisor in the Delta region. I work on all sorts of field crops, grains and forages, but one of those is rice. And the counties that I cover are San Joaquin, Sacramento, Yolo, Solano, and Contra Costa counties.
Together, the UCCE Rice Farm Advisors seek to provide relevant, topical, research-backed information relating to California rice production. Today I have the privilege of sitting down with Dr. Kassim Al-Khatib, who's the Melvin D. Andros Endowed Professor for Weed Science and Specialist in Cooperative Extension at UC Davis. Kassim's career started with the Bachelor of Science in Agronomy from the University of Baghdad, followed by a PhD at Kansas State University, after which he spent time in extension and research at Washington State and Kansas State, before heading west to UC Davis. Kassim's extension program focuses on weed management in rice and other agronomic crops to reach frontline weed managers and natural extenders of weed management information, with the goal to reduce the risk of weeds and weed management-related strategies. His efforts coordinate the use of weed biology, environmental information, and available technology to prevent unacceptable levels of weed damage by the most economical means, while posing the least possible risk to people and the environment. Kassim is responsible for the Herbicide Resistance Screening Program that the UC Cooperative Extension provides, free of charge, to rice growers and PCAs who are interested in determining the herbicide-resistant status of their rice weeds. I've asked Kassim to talk about the herbicide-resistant screening process and tips for weed managers when it comes to collecting and submitting weed samples for testing. Hi, Kassim. Thanks for making the time to be here today.
Thanks, Sarah.
Let's talk a bit about your background and education and how you came to be here at UC Davis.
Yeah, I am here in UC Davis as a professor of weed science and also weed specialist. Before that, I was the state director for UC IPM program. And before that, I was a professor at Kansas State University. That's the place I went to school to. I spent about 15 years there. But before going to K-State, I was also a weed specialist at Washington State University. Currently, I do research, teaching, and extension. My research focus on weed biology and weed management, herbicide-resistant weed, and off-target herbicide movement, which many people call it herbicide drift. I have taught many classes, including weed science, herbicide interaction, integrated weed management, integrated pest management, physiology of herbicide resistance. I supervise graduate student and postdoc, in addition to do extension work with the growers on different aspects of weed management.
All that to say, Kassim, I think you stay pretty busy. Well, you mentioned herbicide resistance, and that's kind of why we're talking today. As we all know, the state of herbicide resistance in California rice weeds is probably one of the highest, at least in the United States. So let's talk about how herbicide resistance typically develops in plants.
Sure. Well, herbicide resistance means that the weed withstand herbicide treatment which originally is susceptible to. So the weed develop resistance. Now the question, how that happened? When you take one single weed, take a population of that weed, phenotypically they look the same. But if you look at these plants, and if you take 1 million of these plants, you will find a few plants, maybe one plant in 1 million, has slightly different genetic background. And with this genetic background, that single plant can survive herbicide treatment. So when a grower or a person keep using that herbicide, the herbicide will kill all the susceptible plants over time. It's not going to take 1 year to do it, but if you do it over time, will clean the susceptible plant. And what you have left is that single plant I talk about it, which has a genetic makeup that resists the herbicide. That single plant will produce seed and over time build a population, and that population is resistant to the herbicide. Now, how that happened? Well, it's a species dependent. Some species, they have more genetic diversity than others. These are the species that will develop resistant quicker. If the grower continue use the same herbicide or herbicide belong to the same mode of action, that will accelerate the rate of development of resistance. If the grower does not do crop rotation, which we're going to talk about that also can lead to faster resistant development. In addition, if the person doesn't use other method of weed control, mechanical, cultural, good cultural practices, biological, all these lead to development of resistant quicker.
Great answer. And I'm glad you touched on crop rotation and how it can affect herbicide resistance, because I do want to talk about rotation in general, and not just crop rotation, but also rotating the modes of action when it comes to the chemicals you're using. Can you talk about how rotating modes of action can help fight against the rise of resistance in weeds?
Well, if you take rice, for example, this is the crop we're talking about here, we have probably 12 different herbicide label on rice. 6 of those belong to the same mode of action. So if a weed develop resistant to one of these 6, in general, they will develop resistance to the other 6 of the herbicides. So you lost half of what you have in your hand because of this resistance. So what probably the good way to use herbicide is to rotate the mode of action. Don't rely on one mode of action and you repeat using that mode of action. Other thing you could do is mixing 2 herbicides with 2 different mode of action that they can kill that weed. And with that also, we will help preventing or delaying resistance. This is for chemical standpoint. Rotation for crops also can help. And I fully understand on rice we have limitation because the soil is heavy, does not accommodate different crops. But anytime you do a crop rotation, you delay the resistance. This is another thing you need to do if you can. Other factor that you can consider is to control weeds before you plant rice, which we call it the still seed bed. I know this is difficult sometimes because of weather conditions, but this also will help because you can get rid of the weeds before they grow in the crop.
Mm-hmm. And for people who might be less familiar with the stale seed bed, let's go into, I guess, how that looks in our rice systems.
Well, in rice system, what you need to do is multiple ways you can do it. One way is after you work the ground, there are weeds is going to come up. You can flush the field with water, or even if you get enough rain, weeds will emerge. And what you need is to come and control these weeds. You can control them chemically, you can control them by disking the ground, and that will reduce the level of weeds in your crop, in season crop.
Thanks for clarifying that. Now, just to kind of narrow in on California rice, because that's what we're going to really focus on here. Let's talk about why herbicide resistance is such a huge problem in California rice in particular compared to other systems.
Sure. I think it's a very serious problem here in California. It's affecting the sustainability of the rice cropping system. As I said earlier, we had about 12, 13 herbicide, and half of them belong to one mode of action. We do not use quite a bit of crop rotation. There is no many weed control methods. Our growers are very good. They use clean seeds, so they don't introduce weeds to their field. They control weeds on the levees, ditches. They use high seeding rate to suppress weeds. They use water, another thing, deep water, so they suppress weeds. So they use multiple things, but herbicide continue to be the main method of weed control. And as I said earlier, we don't have too many herbicides. And when growers continue to use the same mode of action, it will result of resistance. We did quite a bit of research, and we found that we do have resistance in certain population to 2, 3, 4, even 5 mode of actions. So this is a challenging to control these weeds with multiple resistance to multiple herbicide. But again, not rotating herbicide, no crop rotation, limited methods of weed control all led to this serious problem in California rice.
Absolutely. I'm really glad you summarized it like that. But because I guess there's been such a history of strenuous weed populations in California rice, weeds that are able to overcome essentially everything that the growers and researchers have thrown at them. Is that part of the reason why the herbicide resistance testing program that you currently head up began?
Yes, that's absolutely right. We try to help the growers to identify what resistance they have. This is a key point in management. You need to know what resistance you have so you know what herbicide to use to control weeds. Instead of trial the error, and instead of shooting in the dark, they will have data that they can rely on and use the right herbicide to control these weeds.
How long has the program been open to growers and PCAs?
Well, it was a program in place for some time, but in 2015, we start this, extensive program. This program, as I said, 2015 we start. It's supported by the Rice Research Board, California Rice Research Board. So we started actually in 2015, the modified program. Before that, we did some testing here and there, but we didn't have really a formal program.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So since you talked about the formal program, can you explain the steps that are involved from a weed manager or a grower seeing suspected herbicide resistance in the field all the way to the end of what that process looks like?
Sure. So if the farmer or the PCA think they have resistance, they collect seeds. And probably we'll talk about that later on. But they collect seeds, they take it to the UC Farm Advisors, or they bring it to the rice experiment station in Biggs. We require certain amount of seeds. We require the seeds to be mature and quality seeds. Then some of the weeds, they have dormancy. They don't germinate. So we break the dormancy for these weeds. We have our method, what we do to break the dormancy. After we break the dormancy, then we grow these plants in the greenhouse, and we treat a certain weed, every weed actually, a species, with the herbicide label on that weed. So if we have watered grass, for example, we treat it with all herbicide that supposed to control watered grass. And then we look at the response of the weeds. And in the end, we take data for the response. We take photo for the response of this population. And then we send a report to the grower to tell her or him, this is the resistance you have. this is the herbicide that control your weed, and this is the herbicide you need to avoid them because your weed has resistance to this herbicide. This is kind of summarize what we do, but there are a lot of details in between.
I guess in order to make sure that, say I'm a grower and I'm going and collecting my seed, to get the most important information out of that report, getting that good quality seed, like you mentioned, is really vital. But since the weed seeds mature at different points throughout the season, you guys must be receiving seed sample submissions probably all rice season, probably a little bit after harvest has begun, huh?
We have directions to the growers. It's on the UC Rice website, how they collect the seeds. The website also has a video, how you do that. So we ask the growers to collect seeds at maturity and, take a paper sack, put them by the head of the weed and put the head in the back and try to shake the head, and the head will drop the mature seeds in the back. So we will have a seeds for us to test it. Now, we ask also growers to be careful because some of the weed shatter early. So they may need to collect these weeds before they shatter. So for example, sprinkle top, it shatter quickly after, the panicle develop. So they need to pick those seeds. Then you have early water grass come after that, barnyard grass come after that, and then you have the common weeds like the small flower, bulrush, and in the end you have late water grass. So they need to go after these weeds in the right stage, so you don't collect them green, and also you don't allow them to shatter, and then you don't have seeds to collect. If they collect a green seeds and send this to us, there's two things can happen. The seed can rotten in the back, or they will not germinate, and that create a problem. And we have some cases where we told the growers that, or PCA, that your seed was not good quality and we cannot give you the results.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. So there are a couple of reasons then that a sample might be unusable.
Correct.
And then when you send the report, let's talk about just like confidentiality. Who sees a report that gets sent in the program?
Well, as I said earlier, generally growers give us the seeds sometime late September, early October. By end of October, we start the process of doing the screening, as I described earlier. Then in the end, we will have the results and send it to the growers. This is very confidential. We ask the grower to give us some information, some sort of where is the field is, what's the history of the field, what herbicide they use in the field, and that will help us in making decision and recommendation to the grower. What's their contact information, their phone number. If we run into a problem, we call the grower or PCA to tell them this is the problem we facing. And to answer your question, is very confidential between us and the person who sent us this. Nobody else will see the results.
Fantastic. Right. I know that there's been some state or county-wide reporting of resistance, but it's never tied to an individual field or an individual grower. I think the most localized it gets is county-wide basis.
Sure. And one thing I didn't mention, that we try to send the results to the growers sometime in mid-March, so they can make decision about what to use for the coming season, because they need to buy chemical, they need to make an order, and with that, we will give them the information. For example, this year, we sent the last report 2 days ago. So all the growers receive their report. They know what resistance they have, and they know what chemicals they need to buy.
Sounds great. Sounds very valuable information. I guess from a more research standpoint, let's move on and talk about some of the most important lessons that we've learned from the herbicide resistance testing program as a whole.
Well, that's a good question, Sarah. We get samples like it depends on the year. Some year we get more than 100 samples. Some of them we get about 40, 50. It depends on the year, what they face, and so forth. Half of the sample we received, they show no resistance. And what does this tell us? That there is other issue that the farmer did not get good control of the weeds with the herbicide they use. It could be environmental, could be the way they spray the chemical, the timing of the application. There's multiple things can cause this lack of response, but half of the cases, most of the time we see resistance at least one mode of action. So the lesson we learned that we do have extensive herbicide resistant spread across all counties. Some of the resistance are multiple resistance. Some of them resistant to more than 3 or 4 herbicide, which is difficult to manage at this stage. We're working on alternatives. We're working on recommendation, what we need to tell these people what to use. And when they receive the report from us, we give them this information. We recommend certain things to the growers to consider.
Where can people who are interested find the herbicide testing form? And is there a website or a place you want to direct them to look for it?
Yeah, if you Google UC Rise website, it will take you to the website. And you can click on the weeds. And under that tab of the weeds, you see multiple information there. One of them about herbicide screening. So the website for the UC Rise, which is agronomy-rise-ucdavis-edu/, or if you want to go directly to that website, which has the information about herbicide resistance screening, you can go to agronomy-rise-ucdavis.edu/resistant-weed-seed-testing. You can get the information, all the forms, all the information, how you pick the seeds. And of course, I don't know if we talk about this, you need to take the seeds either to the office of your farm advisors, or you bring it directly to the Rise Experiment Station. We have a box at the door where you put the sample and the form, and in 3-4 months after that, you will get the result from us.
Yep. And I did just double check with Dustin Harrell at the station on Tuesday. They will have that box up and ready to accept submissions when the season starts. And if no one's there, you can just leave it. We're up at the station, at least one of us every day or so somebody will get it. All right, Kassim, is there anything else you'd like to touch on with this program? You've given us a lot to chew on here.
Well, I think we're pretty excited about this program. We think if you have resistance, if you lack of control, then you give us a sample. We will help you to make a decision to select the right herbicide. Also, my recommendation to the growers, use all the tools you have in hand. Don't forget good quality seeds, clean seeds, high seeding rate, good water management, control weeds on the levees and the ditches. All these will help you to reduce the impact of weeds on your crop and also delay the resistance.
Fantastic summary, Kassim. Can I ask you to share your contact information if anybody wants to reach out to you further?
Well, you can send me an email, kalkhatib@ucdavis.edu, or you can call me at 530-219-0529. And I enjoy it when growers call me about weed problem.
I've seen you at the grower meetings, Kassim. It's hard to get you to stop having conversations with growers sometimes. All right. And then with that, I think we'll just wrap up with a final question. Don't worry, this one's not a serious question, but it might be the hardest one to answer. What is your favorite rice to eat, Kassim?
Well, I like the Carlos rice. It's sticky, it's tasty, it stay fresh for longer period of time. So this is my favorite rice to eat.
Fantastic. Thank you. Wow, you had that answer all ready to go. Okay, Kassim, thank you very much. And we'll have you back on the podcast soon.
Pleasure, my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
We've got quite a few save the dates here that I'm going to go over. The first is the no-till/reduced till rice field day, and that'll take place Tuesday, June 10th, 2025. The location for this will be in Grimes at the Gallagher Farm site, and we'll release that information as the time comes closer. But essentially, this field day will be an opportunity for UC researchers to share what we've been learning about using reduced tillage or no tillage in terms of our rice systems here in California. Again, that's the no-till, reduced till rice field day, Tuesday, June 10th. The next upcoming event will be the Rice Production Workshop. That's a 2-day event. That's Wednesday and Thursday, July 23rd and the 24th. And that's going to be a workshop where we talk about the principles and practices of rice production in California. This workshop only comes around every 2 years, so we're very excited about this, and the location of that is still TBD. We'll also be hosting a weedy rice workshop on Tuesday, August 5th, 2025. That location is also to be determined, but it will be in the Delta. And this workshop will talk about all of the current UC research regarding weedy rice in California rice systems. Finally, the California Rice Field Day will take place Wednesday, August 27th, 2025 at the California Rice Experiment Station in Biggs, California. If you've been to this before, you know it's a pretty much all-day event, a great opportunity to not only see the UC research, but also the research that the rice breeders are undertaking up at the Rice Experiment Station, as well as the opportunity to partake in a delicious lunch. Again, that's the Rice Field Day, Wednesday, August 27th at the Rice Experiment Station in Biggs. For more information about these and upcoming events, feel free to check out our resources, which include the UC Rice blog and the UC Agronomy Rice website. In terms of other resources you might like to take advantage of, you can also look at our newsletters, which include Rice Briefs, which covers Clusiolo, Rice Notes, which covers Yuba Sutter, Rice Leaf, which covers Butte and Glen, and Field Notes, which covers rice in the Delta region. Thanks for listening to Thoughts on Rice, a University of California Cooperative Extension podcast from the University of California Agriculture and Natural Resources. You can find out more about this podcast on our website, thoughtsonrice.buzzsprout.com. We'd love to hear from you, whether it's from using our text link in the show notes, a survey submission in our feedback form, also in the show notes, or in a comment or rating on your podcast streaming service of choice. We're also experimenting with polls on Spotify, so if you're listening on Spotify, you might have an option to answer some of those questions, and we might be able to talk about that on the air. You can also email us with any comments, questions, or concerns at thoughtsonrice@ucdavis.edu. In this area, we've seen growers starting their field prep, and so we know that rice planting is just around the corner. Stay safe out there, and remember, like the growers like to say, have a rice life. Mention of an agrochemical does not constitute a recommendation, merely the sharing of research findings. Always follow the label. The label is the law. Find out more at ipm.ucanr.edu. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are the speaker's own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of the University of California. The material and information presented here is for general purposes only. The University of California name and all forms and abbreviations are the property of its owner, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service.